Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Right Honourable Member for Staffordshire Moorlands for securing this important debate. As members, we are all united by a desire to do as much as we can to tackle the scourge of modern slavery. My constituency, Wimbledon, is known for many things, but perhaps less well known for its connection to one of the greatest battles for human dignity, the abolition of slavery. Over 200 years ago, William Wilberforce, a champion for the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade, lived in Wimbledon. Just as Wilberforce rejected inhumanity in his time, we must renew our commitment to eradicating this injustice in ours. And though his efforts were huge, we stand here on the 10th anniversary of the Modern Slavery Act, aware that the fight is far from over. Whether in the form of human trafficking, criminal, forced or sexual labour, or domestic servitude, modern slavery pervades our society, treating people as commodities for criminal gain. The introduction of the Modern Slavery Act in 2015 was a watershed moment, hailed as innovative and world-leading, echoing the UK's leadership in abolishing the transatlantic slave trade in the 19th century. It was designed to protect victims, prosecute offenders and prevent exploitation at its roots. Of the nearly 50 million people around the world estimated to be trapped in modern slavery, some 120,000 are thought to be resident in the UK. In 2024, over 19,000 potential victims of modern slavery were referred to the Home Office through the National Referral Mechanism, a 13% increase from the previous year. Horrifyingly, 31% of all referrals last year were children. The Act introduced several key measures, including Section 42, to establish the role of the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner, to encourage best practice in the prevention, detection, investigation and prosecution of modern slavery and to support victims. However, for a staggering 18 months between 2022 and 23, whilst we had 3 Conservative Prime Ministers, we had no anti-slavery commissioner. During this time, engagement between the Modern Slavery Unit and key NGOs declined. The government's ministerial strategy groups, once critical to tackling modern slavery, were disbanded. It is for this reason that the Lib Dems advocate for Parliament to have the power to appoint an independent anti-slavery commissioner should the post remain unfulfilled for 3 months, unfilled for 3 months. But we need to do more than simply ensure the role is not left vacant. Challenges still persist in the effectiveness of the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner due to inadequate resources and limited capacity. Despite the current Commissioner's efforts since, and I quote, inheriting a dormant office, the Department remains underfunded and under-resourced. Without appropriate funding and resources, the Commissioner's ability to fulfil its legal obligations is quite clearly compromised. The Modern Slavery Act was praised for introducing provisions aimed at greater transparency in supply chains, with the goal of protecting workers, compelling large commercial organisations to eliminate modern slavery from their operations. Section 54 requires companies with a turnover of 36 million or more, supplying goods or services and operating in the UK, to introduce an annual slavery and human trafficking statement. Although welcomed, Section 54 only mandates businesses to report on their efforts to address forced labour in supply chains. It does not require them to act. In fact, simply reporting no action seems to be all they need to do to comply with the Act. Whilst, despite the Secretary of State's authority to seek injunctions on non-compliant organisations, none have been issued. In 2022, 29% of eligible organisations failed to submit a modern slavery statement. Additionally, the number of statements recorded the following year dropped by almost 50%, indicating that businesses are deprioritising compliance. And whilst previous governments have expressed their intentions to strengthen Section 54 by introducing mandatory reporting requirements and specific penalties for non-compliance, no changes have been implemented to date. Too often, victims are hidden in plain sight. It's sobering to think many of us may have encountered them without even realising it. Recently, for example, the care sector has become a focal point for modern slavery. The inclusion of care workers and home carers on the shortage occupation list made them eligible for the health and care visa. From 2022 to 23, the number of health and care visas granted skyrocketed, reflecting the sector's increased reliance on foreign workers. But alongside that growth came a disturbing increase in exploitation. with over 600% more care sector modern slavery cases reported. Evidence given to the Modern Slavery Act Committee last year reported, by the end of 2023, an alarming 21% of the 1,300 NHS suppliers were identified as being at high risk of modern slavery. The types of exploitation vary, but one common theme is the charging of illegal recruitment fees. Victims are often forced to pay as much as £30,000 for visa applications and supposed training courses, amounts so large that workers often have no choice but to stay trapped in abusive conditions. The care sector continues to grapple with systemic issues such as low pay and poor working conditions, exacerbated by fragmented regulatory oversight, spread across agencies like the Care Quality Commission and the Employment Agency Standards Inspectorate. This lack of coordination hampers effective enforcement. The Gang Masters and Labour Abuse Authority holds modern slavery investigation powers in England and Wales and receives referrals from the CQC, but its remit does not specifically cover the care sector. Despite prioritising the sector, the Gang Masters and Labour Abuse Authority struggles with insufficient funding and a low inspector-to-worker ratio, falling below international standards. As a result, proactive inspections are rare, whilst many workers fear reporting exploitation due to potential reprisals. The former Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Special Representative's 2022 report highlighted the Gang Masters and Labour Abuse Authority's effectiveness in preventing and investigating labour exploitation and protecting vulnerable workers, but stressed the need for greater financial support to fully realise its capacity. Whilst the Liberal Democrats have consistently called for a powerful new worker protection enforcement authority to safeguard those in precarious work through intelligence-led enforcement and a firewall that separates labour standards enforcement from border control. The UK's current immigration system exacerbates the vulnerabilities of migrant workers. The previous Home Affairs Select Committee described a deprioritisation of human trafficking in favour of attention and irregular migration under the previous government's policies. And I warmly acknowledge the fact the current Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill seeks to repeal much of the Illegal Migration Act's provisions on modern slavery. In concluding, I would like to return to where I began. Today we inherit not only Wilberforce's legacy, but also his responsibility. Modern slavery may adopt new forms, but its cruelty remains the same. It thrives in the shadows of all our communities, the exploitation of the vulnerable and the complacency of indifference. Let us pledge not only to celebrate how far we have come, but to redouble our efforts as there is still far to go. For in remembering Wilberforce's endeavours, we must find the courage to shape a future in which his campaign to entirely abolish slavery finally achieves its aim. Thank you.
Tom Collins.